The Way of Tao teaches us that, in order to master the world, one must allow events to unfold naturally. By making natural changes, you cannot rule the world. Lao Tzu. Our culture is constantly striving, and control seems to be the goal. We don't need to look far to see evidence of this. For instance, workers are increasingly monitored and regulated, especially now that we have the means to do so. Governments also make greater efforts to monitor their citizens, whether it is through the camera, supervision, or the proposal of a social credit system. The latter, which is ironically a Chinese creation and completely at odds with the philosophy that sprang from the same ground as Taoism. In contrast to a control-obsessed society, Taoism emphasizes letting go and moving forward. Follow the flow. At first look, letting go could appear to be a sign of weakness, but the Taoists assert that by having a correct grasp of how the universe operates, we can approach life more shrewdly, effectively, and fluidly, rather than going against the current. This means that the strength of letting go is a sophisticated sort of strength, instead of by force. The primary scripture of Taoism, the Tao Te Ching, was authored by the enigmatic sage Lao Tzu. There are various interpretations that we might make of this passage. One option is to think of it as a ruler's handbook. The Tao Te Ching's sections on leadership are characterized by Lao Tzu's emphasis. Tzu emphasizes ruling by not ruling, equating running a nation to frying. A little fish, meat spoiled by excessive poking. He stated that as a monarch tightens his hold on the people, there are a variety of adverse effects. We observe that when the government is overly patronizing, people start to distrust one another. People start to rebel when it becomes too obtrusive. But when a leader is understated and upholds the highest standards, people will be healed, as long as they are given room to develop organically. Lao Tzu clearly favors a passive style of government, which doesn't just apply to not only to running a country, but also to running our own lives. Because on any level, letting go is essential to allowing nature to do its job. In this video, I'll demonstrate a number of ways that Taoism demonstrates the strength of letting things go and flowing naturally. Number 1. Wu-Wei, a central idea in Taoism, is best understood as effort action or flow. No acting, or knowing when to act and when not to, is another way to describe the state. When we examine ourselves critically, we see that the desire for control rules the day. In the spheres of a man, we feel the urge to regulate our animals, kids, gardens, video games, in some instances, our soulmates, and most importantly, our future. This is not always a bad thing. We must have some impact on the environment in order for us to survive. In particular, self-control can help us move in the right direction. Human civilization probably wouldn't have emerged without control, but having too much of it is useless. We appear to consistently underestimate the underlying natural forces of what we do each day. We are powerless over everything, and many things happen when we relinquish control. Consider a tree as an illustration. We may plant it, provide it with water, fertilizer, and exposure to the elements, sufficient sunlight. But because humans interfere with nature, any further involvement will only harm the process of fulfilling its duty. Attraction is another illustration. Simply displaying ourselves is the first step in enticing someone, so that they will become interested in us. To attract is to let people be aware of our existence. After that, attraction can happen or not. When the attraction is there, it's simple to lose it by acting too quickly and going against the natural flow. We cannot control the inherent phenomenon of attraction. It just cannot be applied. It must instead expand or erupt naturally. Additionally, there is only one method to allow the seed of attraction to blossom into a lovely tree, which, with the exception of the occasional watering, is not intervening. The heart becomes fonder in silence. Because of this, it's important to let go in relationships. Because when we let go, we allow the forces of the universe to take their course, as soon as a conflict has ended. Anger corrodes by nature. Trust must naturally regain itself after being violated. It cannot be forced. Therefore, the distinction between controlling and allowing is made through by simply letting go. Number 2. Adapting to change. The Taoists were acutely aware that life develops through a perpetual flux of opposition between yin and yang, high and low, light and dark. We can't really do much about it, and the most effective way to live is to follow the ebb and flow of existence. Life's progression and changes are inevitable. Yet so many individuals seem to be holding on to their current or past situation. They cling tenaciously to a limb or rock in the analogy of the river stream because they are terrified. They are unwilling to relinquish control of their position. Simply put, they lack faith in the universe. A rigorous lifestyle is the result of this. They observe how quickly life is passing them by, including the numerous chances for progress, and they waste all opportunities. As stated by Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching, the dead are stiff and inflexible, whereas the living are flexible and giving. Dead plants are brittle and dry. Living plants are supple and delicate. The ones who choose to swim against the current are the biggest consumers of energy. They might view taking a stand in life that is utterly disagreeable as an act of honor and virtue. However, putting up persistent resistance to the way the universe works isn't a very effective strategy. This is a way to life that almost certainly leaves one exhausted and unhappy. Follow your strengths rather than attempting to fix your weaknesses, we could argue. Accepting change encompasses both usefulness and unusefulness. Zhuangzi, a Taoist philosopher, noted that usefulness is dependent on the situation. For instance, owning a car is less advantageous when residing in New York than when residing elsewhere, in the countryside, where it is 50 kilometers to the nearest village. In light of this, we must be willing to let go of things that are unnecessary in some circumstances and adopt what would be more helpful. Number 3. Not concentrating on the results. Similar to the Stoics, the Taoists noticed that concentrating on the future has a detrimental effect on us. When we dwell on the future excessively, we become nervous. Desire for an uncontrollable outcome fuels our current pursuits, and the more we seek it, the less we appreciate the present moment, which is all we have. Further explaining that, the more we value something outside, Zhuangzi says that the worse our current performance is. He describes an archer who becomes unable of shooting when his concentration becomes excessive. A person who is striving for a piece of earthenware uses all of his talent. He shoots timorously if the prize is a brass buckle. If it is a gold object, he fires as if he couldn't see. The archer's skill is the same in each situation. However, in the last two cases, he is affected by solicitude and values the external prize above all others. Anyone who places significance on the outside of things exhibits self-disregard. However, this does not imply that those who desire material goods are foolish. It implies that we become immobile in the present when our thoughts are on the future. The flow state that we observe in activities like athletics is based on this notion, both dance and art. When we are in this flow state, we are entirely focused on the task at hand. Do not consider the future. Like the dance is dancing by itself. The last one, number 4. Releasing surplus. Everyone aspires to be at the top in a society where status is everything. Not because it's necessarily the ideal location, but rather because we've determined as a group that it is. That having a higher status is ideal and having a low status is terrible. Once we reach the top, maintaining it requires a lot of work, since everyone wants to be there. Everyone wants to adopt your stance. Compared to the lower regions, where one lives more privately and with fewer restrictions, it is less stressful. Less work overall, less rivalry, and fewer enemies. However, the other extreme is a place of deprivation. We become ascetics. If we actively seek the very bottom, there is still a deep attachment to deprivation, albeit in a different way. What do we actually need is a question we might pose to ourselves. A bird that builds its nest in the forest just needs one branch, according to Zhuangzi, and that a mouse who drinks from the pond only takes in enough to fill his belly. Therefore, if we focus on what we need and let go of excess, we can stop our things from the boundaries of our confinement, which lets us move easily. Additionally, Epicurus noted that obtaining the bare essentials of life is simple, and that living with happiness is achieving through moderation. It's a sustainable and a simple route. Those who employ moderation are already on the way to the Tao, wrote Lao Tzu. We allow nature room to grow when we stop trying. The potential is found in believing in the universe and recognizing that it is constantly changing, becoming flexible and loose rather than brittle and unyielding. The ability to let go allows us to float down the stream without grabbing onto rocks. We remove the unnecessary weight from our bodies to let us get through life with peace and happiness. I thank you all for listening, and I hope you enjoyed learning something new about the Way of Tao.